Continuous learning is the minimum requirement for success in any field. Brian Tracy. Welcome to the Stitch for Success podcast. I'm your host, Monica Allen. I'm a wife, mom, daughter, entrepreneur, author, friend, and lifelong learner. For over 8 years, I was trapped in corporate America and dreamed of escaping. I took the leap over 15 years ago, retiring from corporate. With just $700 and an idea, over the years we have grown multiple six-figure and seven-figure brands. I have mentored and employed dozens of other people along the way. The road has not been easy. I have battle wounds, bruises, and scars to prove it. And on this podcast, I share lessons learned from my failures and successes. You will also learn from other business owners who have become stitched for success as they pursue their entrepreneurial passions. My goal and hope for you is that you can learn from our mistakes and our wins and have an extremely successful business that stands the test of time. On today's episode, we continue the second part of my conversation with Wayne Kurzen, a pilot, businessman, and EOS business coach. Stick around to hear what you should know about business as we enter into 2021. So, Wayne, I know we're in a very interesting environment right now, but there are, of course, businesses popping up. And there are going to be new businesses starting in 2021. What words of wisdom do you have for entrepreneurs just getting started in this current environment?
One of the most important things, and I kind of look at it as the whole man or whole person or whole woman concept, is mentally be a learner like you are, always learning. Be successful people, typically we find are just ravished readers. And so read at least a book a month, if not more. Be involved with people who are in a stage where you are, or maybe where you want to go, like a podcast like this. And there's webinars, but you've got to really be getting smarter at what you're doing. And relying on your own intuition is generally not the greatest idea. So I would say get smart. Of course, you folks involved in organizations like EO that are peers like you, I'm involved in a peer group of CEOs. That's incredibly important because they're where you are. And let's face it, entrepreneurs is a special breed. And if you're not one, you don't even understand an entrepreneur, but we're just different. And so to be rubbing shoulders, and the other thing, it can be lonely. And so to be in the relationships with others who are moving or have already achieved what you have is really very, very important. So being a learner. Secondly, I think is you have to take care of yourself, and that's to protect yourself. So it's time to eject all your negative friends and family in terms of being in a relationship with them where they're affecting you, because this is hard, and you don't need additional negativity to be coming into your life when you're struggling, as you usually do when you start a business. It's just the way it is. I think another thing is don't expect immediate success. In fact, don't give up. I mean, there's millions of stories of people who were struggling and about to give up, and then all of a sudden, bam, here comes the breakthrough. So I'd say it's don't give up. I think physically, you need to schedule time for your own physical, whether it's exercising, eating right. I'm not real good at both of those, except for golf. But you need the energy. In fact, and I have a coach right now. My coach says, you owe it to your clients to have the energy and to be alert and sharp, so you can serve them the best that you can. So we got to take care of ourselves in that regard. The other thing is, you never reach a time where everything is done. I can just sit back and relax. And so what happens is we neglect the really, really important relationships of our family. So someone like yourself with all those things going on and kids and all that, it'd be very easy to not give the right amount of time. And pretty soon then you're feeling guilty and all kinds of stuff. So that affects you mentally and emotionally. So that's the big thing. I think get smart, get in relationships. And a mentor would be really helpful. Mm-hmm. If not a mentor, and then it could be someone who is a couple of friends or something that are like I said, they're already achieved what you want and start to meet with them. So taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I'm a Christian. If I can easily get so wrapped up in running my business that I neglect that part of my life as well. So it's taking care of yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so those things, and all of those things are hard to do because you've got this dream and you see all these things you need to do, and you just get so caught up in doing that you neglect them.
That's very true. But I do feel like the spiritual side, and I don't talk a lot about that on the podcast, but I do feel like for me, the spiritual side has gotten me through so many tough times. When I did want to give up, when I was, in tears over something that I felt like I couldn't get over at the moment, but that
Yeah.
would lift me. That would get me over the hump. So I do
Well,
think that's really important.
yeah. So from a Christian standpoint, the Bible is full of things that are very encouraging and so forth. But outside of that, in other spiritual realms, and that are really to realize that it's not you, that there's a power bigger than you, that you're loved by someone other than yourself. It's because entrepreneurship is not an easy road. There are some people who have a flash success, but everyone's not going to be a Sarah Blakely and create $1 billion company. And she's had plenty of struggles along the way in creating Spanx. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
So what type of recommendations would you give? I know you mentioned getting a mentor, but let's say at this point you can't afford a coach. What recommendations would you give to someone who can't afford a coach right now?
Well, typically there are experienced business people who actually invite the opportunity to make a difference. So it's maybe finding someone who's willing to invest in you. And I would say it becomes a scheduled thing. I have 2 or 3 coaches right now. I've always got coaches. So it's finding someone that's willing, that's close enough to be a friend. And not all mentoring is all that expensive, but it almost always is well worth the investment. So I would say that, or maybe find a group of business owners that meet, and some of the network organizations of business folks are not really that expensive, a couple $100 maybe a month or something like that. But you got to spend a little bit of money sometimes, or not spend, but invest it in order to really become who you want to become. So that'd be my recommendation.
Yeah,
Just
that's
and
true.
ask someone, hey, I really respect you and what you've done in the business world, and I really, really would appreciate if you would mind meeting with me every week, every couple of weeks or something, and let us just talk about what's going on, because I need your advice, something like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really good advice. I definitely know that Ethan and I being a part of EO and now meeting you, it has definitely changed and helped our business tremendously. I mean, there are things that we wouldn't have even thought of had we not met certain people or, been a part of certain conversations. So it's been really good. Okay, so you mentioned learning and you mentioned books. Do you have like a favorite book or a book recommendation for our budding entrepreneurs or our newish
Yeah.
entrepreneurs?
One of my favorites is called Essentialism, and
Okay.
it's basically because when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, there's just so many things you can do that's tugging at you to do. It's actually learning to say no. So essentialism is all about that discipline, saying no to and only saying yes to a few things that are truly important. I've heard it said many times. Warren Buffett says no to 1,000 times for every time he says yes to a particular investment. So essentialism is good. What I do, the entrepreneurial operating system, also called Traction, and the book is Traction that defines that. There's a book that's a little bit lighter on reading. It's called What the Heck is EOS? So that's a good place to start. There's some tools in there that you can self-implement and go from there. Of course, Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, written 20 years ago. Hard to believe. but that is a phenomenal book that probably you ought to read it every year. And it's interesting. Some people say, well, out of those 11 companies that he highlighted that were great companies, they'll say, well, 6 of them are no longer around. And I say, yeah, they probably stopped doing what got them there. So the principles are there. So that would be one as well. Anything by Patrick Lencioni, and when you start to have people in your business, he's written 11 or 12 bestsellers. He would be considered the guru on people and leadership. His most famous book was called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So that may be a little bit down the road for a starting entrepreneur, but you just, New York Times best-selling books are published. You can go in there and select from that group. So I also like, interesting on a more softer side is Brene Brown, who has done a lot in the area of the person, dare to lead. She actually can trace many of our challenges and dysfunctions to shame. So I read 3 kinds of books: spiritual books, people books, and business books. And because I love the science of people and what makes people tick. So that's been very helpful.
Yes. And I love all those books. I think you mentioned Good to Great in our first meeting, and I started reading it again and went through it again. So that's, and I love Patrick Lencioni, and I love Brene Brown. Like, those are great. Yeah. So pick those up.
And great TED Talks and stuff, videos by those folks they're just phenomenal.
Definitely. Definitely. So Wayne, I know you've met so many people and you've lived such a rich life. Who do you most admire and why?
I thought, a guy, and I attended his 4-day unconference last year, and it is Patrick Lencioni. He's a strong believer. His stuff is just so rock solid good. So that's one. I actually also got a guy named Andy Stanley, who's a pastor, and you think, oh, what's a great preacher know? Well, when you got 600 people in your organization, you better be pretty good at running a business. But his podcast on leadership is my favorite podcast. And when it comes to culture and just running an organization, it's just tremendous. So those 2 people I'd kind of put up there.
Yeah, Andy's definitely high on my list as well, for sure. So my last question is there one thing that you'd like to share with someone who's thinking about starting a business? They have an idea and they're right there, but they are afraid. What would you say to that person?
Well, I think besides praying, I would get together with a couple of folks that you respect and tell them about what your plan is and get their impression. I would say you're never going to get 100% assurance that it's going to work, because we don't know. Right. But, if you never try, then that's the true failure. So I would say, talk about it, develop some idea as to how you're going to do that, because you probably already have a regular job or something like that. So you're starting this on the side. So kind of figure out how you're going to do that and allot certain amounts of time to do that. But it's really, I just think it's always decide what you want to do and then go find an expert. Don't try to reinvent the wheel yourself, which is what I typically do. And it's just a waste of time. So yeah. That's what I would do. And realize the whole things we've been talking about. Get smart, grow or die. One of our core values is grow or die. So if you're not growing, you are dying. So you have to grow in the areas we talked about, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, all those things.
Right.
So.
Well, Wayne, this has been so enlightening and so much good information. And again, thank you for being our coach and leading us down a really good path. I feel so good about where our company's going in the future. And I really do appreciate you.
Well, I'm honored to be here and honored to be working with you and Ethan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Again, I want to thank Wayne for spending time with us and sharing his expertise and knowledge. Biggest takeaway for me, continue to learn. Read, listen to books, listen to podcasts. Just always keep learning and surround yourself with people who are where you want to go. Positive people, not the naysayers. Lastly, I have a couple of things I want to tell you about. First, I have written an ebook that gives you a little cheat sheet for success in 2021. It's entitled The 10 Secrets to Small Business Success. Of course, business is still unpredictable, but I have outlined 10 tips that will help you be successful in the upcoming year. The ebook is a free download, so visit stitchedforsuccess.com to get your copy. Also, I have started a Stitch for Success Facebook group. If you're listening to this podcast, please go and join this group. The group is dedicated. It's a dedicated community for us to get to know each other and help each other through our experiences. The goal for the group is to help each other be successful in business for the long haul. Small businesses are vital to our communities and economy, so in helping each other, we can hopefully sustain our businesses for a long time to come. This is not a solicitation group. Again, the goal is to pose questions and share experiences to help us all be better. Better companies, better leaders, just better. So head over to Facebook and join the Stitch for Success Facebook group. Just search Stitched for Success and join the group. Thank you so much for listening to the Stitch for Success podcast. I'm so happy that you chose to listen today. If you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. This helps the podcast continue to grow and hopefully make a difference. If you want to continue any part of this conversation, please email me at stitchedforsuccess@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on Instagram at stitchedforsuccess. I would love if you would follow me on Instagram as well. I post inspirational quotes, and I also enjoy sharing some of the creative projects we're working on. Lastly, if you are interested in a complimentary coaching session, please visit stitchedforsuccess.com and click at the top of the page to complete the form to sign up. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great one.